Investors would ask for creating ESOP pool or maybe virtual ESOP pool as a part of your capital table calculation structure, wherein advance before he puts in money into your company, right? Typically, ESOPs are asked for to attract talent in your company, opportunity to employees to participate in long-run value growth. Right? And as a startup, you may not have that kind of money to pay, salaries. So instead of salaries, you may say that, okay, part I'll pay by salary and part I'll give you ESOPs in my company. Right? And as and when, so let's say 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, whenever there is an exit opportunity at very high valuation, that time this employees who have opted for ESOPs will have decent growth capacity. Sense of ownership. So many times I have noticed that maybe like let's say you have given a salary package of 10 lakh rupees plus some ESOPs to some senior management person, right? Just because the value of ESOP is increasing very frequently, right? Company is able to generate investment rounds within first 2 years or 1 year time. Right? And such employee who is really working very hard, he will continue to work very hard and make sure that you are able to reach to that milestone. And when you reach to that milestone, along with company and other investors, even his stake in the company is going to go multifold. So it may happen that probably 3 years he has earned 10 lakhs rupees per year every year, but whenever there is exit opportunity through ESOP, he is taking on 10x, 20x. It's a high risk, high return game for investors as well as employees who are opting for ESOPs. So many times you may find employees saying that no, I'm not interested in ESOPs, just give me full salary. So convincing employees for going for ESOPs is another challenge for entrepreneurs. For investors, they insist on creating ESOP pool or virtual ESOP pool, as I mentioned, because creating ESOP pool and registering itself, it's a task, and there is a good amount of compliances going behind it. So at initial stage, you may not get into it, but as a part of your capital table calculation, you keep whatever percentage, say 10%. ESOP pool, and then you do required calculation for your stake as well as the investor stake in the company. Allocate 10% equity from promoters quota before they invest. This is something what before investor puts in money, he'll ask for ESOP pool, so that later on his stake is not getting diluted because of ESOP. And this will be fully diluted basis. So let's say you have 10% ESOP pool created, investor comes on board, right? ESOP pool is created before. So later on, when next investor comes and puts in money, the equity stake is going to get diluted along with promoters and other investors. The ESOP pool is also going to get diluted. Fine. Liquidation preference. Another most important topic. Yeah.
Just going back previously, how would when bringing on board of advisory, the percentage, how would that play in?
So you are by laws, I mean recent laws still under debate. You cannot issue shares from ESOP pool to anybody else except your confirmed employees, not even the promoters. So as a promoter, you cannot take equity from ESOP pool. It has to be given to employees who are full-time working with you, right? And who have come, the initial period of 6 months period and probation period and everything is done. So there is a process and there are rules and regulations which you have to follow in order to execute the entire ESOP
So
process.
let's relate to ESOP. What if I'm talking about just normal term sheet, right? How would once you sign the term sheet and the SAH, whatever it is, and you intend to bring advisors on board, now would that mean again a confirmation from the investors?
Yeah, so if you are doing it post-investment, then because you are going to dilute your equity, even if dilution is of 1%, you need confirmation from investors, right? So that could be one option, with subject to the confirmation from approval from investors. Another option could be you may give away some equity out of your own kitty, but then you have lock-in period. Your equity is locked.
Yeah.
So even if you want to give away some part of your own equity to somebody else, you would need approval from investors.
That permission available is the sweet equity if some of the time one of the advisor when they work for.
So typically this kind of advisors or sweat equities, this kind of equities are given away before investor comes on board. So before investor comes on board, you have full free pay.
I know we're talking about seed investing,
Right.
and obviously when you grow, you'll probably be able to attract more advisors. People who probably need to get value. So, interesting point. When you said, let's say for example, I get invested and my equity is locked in, right? Now I can, based on permissions, I can allocate or give away, dilute my personal shares, even if the term says I can't, because I'm vested.
Yeah, but then you are
But
taking
if I'm getting a
you are
permission-
taking permission in writing. See, when I said permission, this kind of permissions are always taken in writing. Initially, you may discuss it over phone or whatever, but then finally everything has to be documented, signed, approved.
Mentorship elements are also very mentorship elements.
What is virtual ESOP pool?
So virtual ESOP pool is just you are doing required calculation and you are allocating certain equity on a piece of paper on your Excel sheet. You are not filing required filing with ROC. You are not registering this pool with ROC. Because moment you register this pool with ROC as ESOP pool, then there is a regular compliance what you need to execute as and when you are issuing ESOPs to your employees. So there is a lengthy process and the good amount of compliances which will go into if you have ESOP pool, the actual ESOP pool in place, right? So at initial stage you don't have that kind of time and money also to spend for such compliances, right? So in such scenario, what you do is you just keep this certain number of shares as ESOP pool as a part of your calculation. You don't register it, but it remains as a part of your calculation.
This means that ESOP pool is kind of relying to the founder itself. The
Yes,
pool.
yes.
And kind of he
Yes.
kind of pre-has the permission
Yes.
of that kind of vested, not getting into the vested share. And
True,
he's
true.
pre-permitted that you can issue this share as and when required.
Yes,
So if he has not issued that whole complete 10%, the benefit goes to him only.
Yes.
I have a question. In case of an M&A and let's say an investor is taking majority stake, then how does the promoter get compensated by the ESOP? Is it? Because you said as per the new law, the ESOP
So
may not be used by the
promoters
promoter.
are not ESOP holders.
Right.
So employees who have opted for ESOPs and those who have ESOPs in their kitty, they'll enjoy those benefits.
Okay, so is such a structure possible? Let's say that there is an acquirer who takes 60% stake.
So whenever you reach to that level, see, you are talking about M&A where company has already grown from seed stage to
Right.
multi rounds of investments, and now it has gone for merger acquisition where as a promoter you are ready to give away entire company because you are getting decent valuation there, right? So by that time you have sufficient funds. By that time you have created those actual ESOP pools and you have issued those ESOPs to your employees. So those ESOPs which are earlier on the founders kitty, they are now actually put up into the ESOPs kitty. And then from ESOPs kitty, you are giving away to your employees. Okay, so one thing here, once the SHA is signed and by both the parties, this term sheet has no value. Number one. Number two, the SHA, the term sheet reflects the high level outline terms and conditions what you have agreed upon at initial stage, and based on that your final SHA is going to get built up. Once the SHA is signed between two parties, this term sheet has no value.
Okay. So,
Right? So all the terms and conditions which are mentioned in the SHA, you have to follow those terms and conditions.
Okay, so a follow-up question on the same thing. So can this essentially be used as a blanket provision from the investor, sorry, for the promoters?
So that's what I'm telling you. So it's clearly mentioned that if you are diluting equity, take my permission. Are you diluting equity? You don't have to. But if you want to dilute, you have to take permission. You are spending more than certain value on fixed asset purchase, you need permission. That value is also different. If you are doing anything below that, you don't have to go and question.
And like we are talking about virtual ESOPs, that amount 10 people, whatever expenses, so that we have to keep it aside. That we,
So
we have
okay,
to
so let me
have
clarify this. Let's say there is no ESOP, right? Initially you have just formed a company, there are two directors or the shareholders, right? 50-50% each. Now before investor comes, you said that okay, I want to keep 10% for my employees, right? So now you have 90% available for yourself and 10% for employees. But you have not created this 10% pool in reality. So this 10% is still with you only in your kitty, right? So you are keeping that 10% buffer in your list so that later on you can give this 10% to your employees without disturbing the investors' kitty.
correct. So we have to have a physical print also.
No. It's a virtual. It's just on paper and in your calculation. It's just that in your calculation. Your calculation needs to be done keeping in mind the 20%.
But then how it gets liquidated at the time of like suppose employee is leaving after the vesting period. So we have to provide.
So there is a process of managing the ESOPs, and there is a separate agreement with the employees also that how exactly. So there also there is a vesting period of 4 to 5 years time, right? And if you are giving, let's say 100 shares to somebody as ESOP, right? You are not giving away this 100 shares right at the time of joining. After 1 year, so after 1 year, he has right to take up. He has right but not obligation to take up certain number of shares what you have planned across, so 25% or 20% or whatever, right? Over a period of next 5 years, 3 years, whatever you decide as a management.
So whatever we decide on the terms and condition, that is true. But in case like after 4 years or 5 years, if the cash flow is on negative side, then he decides to leave, then how do we manage that?
So remember one thing, when this is a right of employee to take ESOPs, not obligations, number one. Number two, if he wants to execute this ESOP purchase, he has to pay at the certain valuation, right? Now, as an employee, I am here to work and take home my salaries, right? If I have to buy these shares by paying some money to the company, why I would do this, right? So what company says that okay, you have to pay for this, right? But you have time frame of 5 years after the last vesting. So you have 10 years time horizon to buy these shares. Now 10 years is pretty long time. Right? Let me just complete this. Right? 10 years is pretty long time. So at that time what happens is, let's say there is an opportunity where company gets funding offer from some large investor, VCs. Right? Now, at that point of time, if this guy decides to buy these shares, because he sees that, okay, this VC is going to pay multi X times, right? He won't mind paying that money at that point of time because he is going to get multi X at that point of time. As I first mentioned, it's a right, not obligation. So if even after 5 years, if he decides that nahi mujhe nahi chahiye ye, he may say, sorry, zero. I mean, he did not pay a single penny out of this. So that's where I said it's a high risk, high return game for employees. See, initially he is ready to compromise on his salary which he is going to take on. Right? Maybe he is asking for salary worth 20 lakhs, but now you are convincing him that I can pay only 10 lakhs, but I'll give you ESOP, and he is ready to compromise. So when he is ready to compromise, he is taking a huge risk. Whereas his market value is 20-25 lakhs, but he is ready to take that risk because you are offering him ESOPs, thinking that this ESOP is going to give him multi-X returns.
But ESOPs can be given as grants also, they don't have to be able to take at least. There are some ESOPs you have to pay and some you may not have to pay as an employee. Right?
So that's what I said, there is a process, 3 years, 5 years process, every, you have to issue initially grant to the employee, he may opt, he may reject, right? Depending on his wish and requirement. But he is compromising on his salary, right?
Yes, that is a virtual amount of money which is not, that is being going towards the share capital of the company, and that is what is going to benefit yes. So, why would ever want to refuse? If that is the standard terms and conditions of the company on the basis of which he is being recruited on the very onset itself. Assuming
so
the
company, it's every individual's mindset you have to look into. If you tell somebody that okay, my market value is 25 lakh rupees, but I can pay you only 10 lakh rupees, the rest I'll give you ESOPs.
No, assuming he agrees.
If he agrees, then fine. It's good for you. Not everybody agrees on that. See, somebody who doesn't understand this ESOP part, initially first reaction would be, I'm not interested. So you have to really make him, understand what this ESOP is going to bring in.
From a company strategy point of view, also, if they want to get good employees at the same time, they have a very small bucket or a reasonably moderate bucket for paying salaries. That is a part of the strategy of the company. The company will anyway have to focus into the necessary and say that I will be recruiting you under the headhunter. And I'm willing to recruit people so that these both things match. Otherwise, there's no point of me recruiting him because I just cannot afford that kind of salary at this point.
Yes.
So that becomes
his question was assuming that the employee agrees and he exercises his rights and everything, but after 3 years he decides to move on. What happens is what his question was.
He has exercised
he's got 100 shares now vested fully.
Right, he has paid for that.
He's paid for it also.
So either he has to continue if he sees that okay, there is a big time opportunity, and if he decides because he has some other outside big time opportunity, right? And if he can continue as a shareholder, or company may decide to buy out these shares by paying him the agreed value at that point of time. So when the ESOPs were issued to him, probably that time valuation was let's say 100 rupees. During this 3 years period, company has raised next round of funding, and now currently valuation is 1,000 rupees. Company has to pay at the rate of 1,000 rupees to this employee. And
normally, based on my personal experience, normally ESOP is issued